when you're dealing with brand, it really is an existential reality. You're talking about selfhood. You're talking about identity. And those are real. I know in marketing, we talk about them as marketing concepts, but those are actually real metaphysical concepts. Who you are, your identity is a real metaphysical thing. It's the same thing for your brand. It is a real thing, and you have to treat it in a real way. If you're going to do that, it's less about let's develop our identity, and it's usually much more about let's tap into something that we already know about ourselves, right? Because it's impossible to function without identity as a human being.
Hello and welcome to Marketing Speak. I'm your host, Stephan Spencer. It is my pleasure to have Mordy Oberstein with us. Mordy is the founder of Unify, a brand development consultancy, and he's a communications advisor for Semrush. Renowned for his history of successfully repositioning brands, Mordy is a frequent conference speaker and a contributor to various marketing media outlets. Mordy, it's so great to have you on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, so we've known each other for a number of years. I don't know, at least 5 or 6 or something. We've met in person, and I think the first time we met, you were at Rank Ranger. Is that right?
Yeah. I think we might have, the first time I met him was at a Brighton SEO conference. I'm trying to remember. I think you signed a copy of my book, or a copy of your book, rather. I was holding the book.
Yeah, funny. It's that would have been probably 2017 or 16 or something
like that. Yeah. Wow. Now you make me feel older. I am older.
Age is a state of mind. So you were at Rank Ranger for how long?
4.5 years, something like that. Yeah.
Are they still around, or did they get acquired, or what happened?
Yeah, they got acquired by SimilarWeb. So okay. I don't know exactly what's happening with them. I think they've integrated, like, their blog content got moved over to SimilarWeb. They're still a standalone tool. But I think I saw somewhere that they're trying to be fully integrated into the SimilarWeb platform. I could be making that part up.
Okay. All right, cool. Well, congratulations to the founder. What's his name? Shai?
Yep. Yeah. Shai Harrell.
Cool. So now you are doing your own thing. It's a brand consultancy. Like what makes you the only? There are a lot of brand consultancies out there.
Yeah, I've been straddling.
See, I kind of made that a branding question. You like that?
I do like that. I should really know my point of differentiation really clearly, and I do. So my experience in marketing has been one interesting in the sense that I've done brand for a long time, which people don't realize, and I've done the performance side for a long time. And those teams I found in whatever organization I've been working with don't speak to each other the way that they should. And there's a gap. Performance is performance and brand is brand. But really, brand should be impacting your performance. It's the foundation of performance in a lot of ways. And the reason why I call my consultancy Unify is because it's those two processes should be unified together. They help each other. If you want to go for like an SEO, just give it like some tangibility. If you're trying to rank for a keyword and you lack a digital presence, which means that you lack Google's ability to see you as an authority and relevant, yada, 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 brand can help you do that. Brand can help you build up that presence, build up that authority, so now you can rank for that keyword. They're not two separate things. It's all one and the same. It's like a Neil Young song. It's all one song.
Right. And so when you talk about performance, do you mean just more generally anything that is ROI focused, or do you mean specifically performance marketing or performance advertising? That's a thing, that's like an aspect of marketing is performance marketing.
Yeah, no, I mean a little bit more generally. It's anything that you want to be able to more effectively perform at, which obviously spills over into what we call performance marketing. The core branding should be a part of that. It should be a story that helps you leverage and generate momentum, generate cadence, generate resonance that helps you be able to expand your audience, reach your audience, deliver ROI, whatever your goal may be.
Yeah. Do you have an example of this kind of gap between brand and performance? Maybe a client or a company you worked for, or a colleague, or that some other brand out there that has that gap?
Yeah, I'll give you a really good one. Actually, it's one I haven't worked with them, but I really would like to. If you're out there, Wingstop. So Wingstop is a big wing chain in the U.S. Like, they sell buffalo wings.
Okay.
And what makes them differentiated from their competitor is they only offer takeout. So you can't. So if you want to watch a football game or whatever sporting event, you want to eat your wings, you get to eat your wings at home with your friends without being around a bunch of other drunk people yelling and screaming with wing sauce all over their face. So there's a nice USP there.
Although some people might prefer that.
Some people do. Some people do. Some people do prefer that. Wingstop is for me because I'd rather have the buffalo sauce or all on my face in private. That's not for public consumption. No pun intended.
Yep.
And they're very popular. They're a great brand, but they don't have any positioning in their messaging. So their messaging is basically like, $15.99 wings, or where flavor gets its wings, which is very catchy and very nice, but it lacks any real positioning around what the audience will take away from that product or how the audience relates to that product. And you kind of see this all over the place. I'll say 90% of Super Bowl ads are just like that. They're just trying to be catchy. They're just trying to get buzz. They're just trying to get some chatter around them, but they're not actually tied into any positioning. Yeah. And that is an enormous waste of budget. But the amount of budget you need to now generate buzz or generate momentum or generate, just chatter is just higher because you're not resonating. So you either have two options, either change the messaging or the positioning and resonate, or just keep throwing more money at it in order that you just get that awareness out there. So in advertising in particular, without the resonance, which is not possible without that core branding, you're faced with just having to spend more money to do what you could have done with less money.
By the way, are there any Super Bowl ads? Did you watch the Super Bowl?
I woke up late. I set my alarm to wake up with the kids, and I slept right through it. So I woke up around halftime.
Okay.
Yeah, which is good. I got more sleep, to be honest with you.
Yeah, because of course the time difference. So was there a particular Super Bowl ad that really struck you?
Yes, and I'm going to say Squarespace, which I know I'm not supposed to say, right?
Yeah. How many years were you at Wix?
5, something like that altogether.
Okay. I don't think you're allowed to mention that word.
Well, look,
okay. We won't link to them in the
show notes. Thank God. Now they'll never rank. They had an ad where it was basically, the 1800s or something, 1700s, and there's a fellow in, Ireland on a horse throwing out laptops like a newspaper. And it was really clever. And the laptop was obviously opened to what looked like a Squarespace designed website. And it was basically a way of communicating to the audience who might not be familiar. Like Squarespace's audience, if you're listening to this, they're probably more DIY, SMB kind. They're not super digitally savvy, let's say. And it was a great way of showing the positioning of the brand. Like, we are the equivalent, and your website is the equivalent of what a newspaper used to be. It's a way of like getting out there and spreading the word. And it was a very clever way to get that positioning out there in a way that really resonated and that was tied to the brand identity. Everything worked together. It wasn't just like, here's a celebrity saying something really funny. It actually showed who the company was. It actually showed how the company slides into your life, which is the positioning. And it did it in a way where the messaging really resonated. So great job, Squarespace. I know I'm not supposed to say that, but that's how you know I mean it. That's how you know I mean it.
Yeah. And any particularly bad example of branding as a Super Bowl ad? Because they must have spent, whoever did an ad there was spending upwards of $10 million?
Something like that. I think that if you look at the total cost, you have to produce it. It's not just like buying the ad space. You could be talking it's like $15 million for some of these things, which is bonkers.
Yeah.
I would say 90% of them are really bad. And one in particular that was really bad was Him and Hers, which is a weight loss medicine. And supposedly this was very off-brand for them, but what they basically did was position the product as there is a mass conspiracy out there to keep you overweight, and we are the one true person, and our elixir is the one true solution that you can rely on for accurate weight loss product. And it felt very manipulative, especially around a health topic. Like, I think you should be a little more on the up and up with something like that and not go, aluminum foil, tinfoil hat in your ad just to manipulate user sentiment, which I thought was really irresponsible.
Interesting, because, the only bad PR is no PR, supposedly. So there is no bad PR, right?
Well, tell that to Joe Biden.
Yeah, right. I Googled him and hers, and quite prominently were ads, or not ads, media outlet coverage of their ad from the Super Bowl saying sparking controversy, under scrutiny, all these negative pieces on that Super Bowl ad. And they might be laughing all their way to the bank because they got all that free coverage because they created controversy. I wonder if that was intentional.
If it was intentional, they're still really bad people.
I haven't seen the ad, so I have no idea. Oh, funny. And what do you think about, if you were to spend, we'll use a round number, $10 million on advertising, and you could spend it on a Super Bowl ad, or you could spend it in other areas. I have a feeling I know your answer is going to be spend it in other areas, but let's get more specific then. If that is the case, what would you spend it on to really maximize the value?
I can actually pull the back of the curtain on that. So Wix used to sponsor the Super Bowl. We used to run ads, and they stopped because they said, look, we can spend, let's say it's $10 million. I'm not revealing the actual number because I'm not allowed to, but let's just say it's $10 million. Yeah. We can hit on 3 core areas and divert all that money into that. And what they did was said, look, there's 3 fundamental things that the Wix audience needs to know more about. And that is reliability, it's SEO, and performance. So they divvied that money up to do community building, even just display advertising or sponsorships or conferences, whatever the different teams needed to do, all around showcasing to the user what they called the 3 core pillars of Wix that needed to be more publicized, which was, again, performance, the reliability of the platform, and the SEO of the platform. And you're talking about massive campaigns that went on for years, and the amount of eyeballs and the amount of sentiment and the amount of actual change in the user base was way more impactful. Because in a Super Bowl commercial, Wix was famous for getting in trouble for a Super Bowl commercial, and it was, I'm going to say 2017. It was the year the Seahawks won the Super Bowl. I don't know if that helps anybody or not. And they ran an ad with what's her name? Carly Kloss, who I didn't know who she was until this moment, was some kind of model. And in the ad, they said, you could do SEO super quick with the Wix SEO Whiz. And SEOs lost their mind. Like, oh, I guess you don't need us anymore. I lost my mind because I wasn't at Wix. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm really offended by this. And it's because in the 30-second ad spot, do you know how much you can say? Pretty much nothing. You wanted, for whatever reason, Wix that time wanted to mention SEO. It wanted to mention a lot of things. It wanted to mention it to an audience that wasn't familiar with SEO. And it had 3 seconds to do it. And that's what you got.
So not a good use of money.
Not a good use of money. In fact, it created a problem for them in the end. They created a whole SEO reputation problem, or built on their SEO reputation problem. The money they diverted into community building, publicity around the actual SEO product in a real in-depth manner, the whole sentiment of the brand completely changed around SEO in those, 2-3 years. Much, much more valuable.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, by the way, the year that Seahawks won was 2014.
This must have been the year that they lost, so which was 2017 or 18. I'll look it up. Yeah, sorry. I should have been more specific. Wow. Okay, so there we go. It was that long ago.
I know. Time's an illusion. So a decade, that's just a decade.
It was 3 seconds.
What's a decade?
Not much.
Okay, so let's talk about the unique or unusual way that you identify somebody's brand promise.
I look at it like a therapist. I think a brand marketer is really a therapist. I mean, maybe all marketers are really therapists. I don't want to exclude anybody from being a therapist. Um,
Okay.
but when you're working with a brand, let's just assume that they've been around for a little while. They have a consumer base. They have some sort of semblance of self, let's call it. Because one thing to remember when you're dealing with brand, it really is an existential reality. You're talking about selfhood. You're talking about identity. And those are real. I know in marketing, we talk about them as marketing concepts, but those are actually real metaphysical concepts. Who you are, your identity is a real metaphysical thing. It's the same thing for your brand. It is a real thing, and you have to treat it in a real way. If you're going to do that, it's less about let's develop our identity, and it's usually much more about let's tap into something that we already know about ourselves, right? Because it's impossible to function without identity as human beings. So if you've created a company, you're around for the last 5 years, you're, I don't know, an agency or a marketing agency. It's like, make it like, break the fourth wall. You have a client base, you have an idea of like what you want to do, how you want to do it, who you're for, but oftentimes it's very latent and it's not refined. So you don't really know what to do with it. And I've literally talked to a content marketing agency about this. They said, I know what I want to say something, but whatever I put out there, it just sounds the same as everybody else, and I can't get past that. And literally all I did was dive into that. Well, why did you get into this? Why did you decide to open an agency? Who are you trying to help? What are you trying, outside of making money, what are you trying to achieve for people? And the second we did that, it took 10 minutes. And people joked when I posted on LinkedIn, like in 10 minutes, like, no, there's no way you can do that in 10 minutes. It's not true. You can. Obviously, you can't create a whole identity statement and positioning statement in 10 minutes. But in 10 minutes, you can figure out, hey, wait a second. There's something here. There's a layer of depth and meaning that I kind of was aware of, but I wasn't consciously aware of. And you can pull that out. If you listen to what they're, literally listen to what the people are telling you and act like a therapist. I've literally said to people, so what I hear you saying is, which is a line out of therapy, right? What I hear you telling, the way this lands for me is, and a light bulb goes off. Yes, I've been trying to connect and tap into that forever, and I wasn't able to. Great, now we can start developing this. Now I can start developing positioning and therefore messaging that does sound different because I'm tapped into who I am. So you are a therapist.
Yeah. And what if somebody's going through an existential crisis, which I looked up at according to Wikipedia, it's the impression that life lacks meaning and or confusion about one's personal identity.
Ooh, that's even. There's a Jewish philosopher named Rabbi Dr. Soloveitchik. He says that all prayer is the result of an existential crisis, which is interesting, right? That you're somehow confronted with a reality that you can't control, that you can't deal with, and now you're in crisis. I'll take you through a branding crisis, and let's actually play it out. Jaguar. Jaguar's a branding crisis. Bigger crisis now than before because they tried to solve their crisis but didn't do a good job solving their crisis. They got onto a path where they became like the old person in the room. They were fuddy-duddies, which is such a 1920s kind of word. They became fuddy-duddies. They became old, stale, too regal for their own good. Whereas their actual brand history was they were innovative. They were different. Ferrari, I always forget his first name, said, wow, I've never seen a car like that. Not sure, which car it was in particular. One of those old 1960s Jaguars out of those James Bond movies. I've never seen a car like that before.
Yeah, Enzo Ferrari.
Enzo, thank you. Yeah. And they wanted to get back to those roots of being different because Jaguar kind of became too classic in a way or too associated with wealth and whatnot. And they felt that they were in a crisis, that their sales were suffering because of this. And perhaps, let's assume for a moment that they're correct. That was the issue. So now they're in crisis mode. What brands who are in crisis mode do is act like brands are just people. If you're in crisis mode, you generally react in a way that's probably not the most advantageous. You're in a crisis. You don't know what to do. You jump to that conclusion, or you run to that, or you have this knee-jerk reaction, or you overreact in some way. And what Jaguar did was overreact because they weren't in touch with themselves. They saw the issue, they saw the problem, and they got scared. But they weren't really able to hold on to that fear. If I'm going to put this in like therapeutic terms, being able to stay with it. And because they weren't able to stay with it, they went too far the opposite way. And if you're not familiar with this, they launched a whole campaign called Copy Nothing. And the ad was bizarre. It was like people dressed up. Like it was like imagine a 1980s interpreted dance music video, but for a car. Flashy words, I don't know, innovate everything, copy nothing, accept no compromise, whatever, like all these like cliched words, and people dancing and dressed in vivid, bright colors on Mars, literally, I think on Mars. It didn't resonate at all. But you know what the funny part about this was? The whole idea of copy nothing was an old line, I think, from their founder from the early, 1900s, like going back to the 1930s or 40s, something like that. His whole motto was copy nothing. And that's what led him to create these really innovative designs where Enzo Ferrari was saying, wow, that is amazing. But they never translated that. They never said, hey, you know what? Copy nothing. That's who we've been this whole time. And now we're going to the next evolution of copy nothing, which is whatever they want to be, which is around electric vehicles and blah, 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 blah. But because they overreacted, they got so scared and they said, like, we have to be completely different from what we were before, that they never actually told that brand story in a way that resonated. If I was someone who has an affinity for Jaguar and I saw that ad, I'm like, whoa, that is bizarre. Even if I liked Jaguar, it's bizarre. But if you would have told me, hey, you know what? Copy nothing has been in our DNA since the start, and we've lost our way a little bit. And we're not starting from scratch with copy nothing. We're going back to our roots, which has always been copy nothing. That would have been a brand narrative that would have resonated. There would have been some kind of connectivity between the old identity and the new identity. But brands in crisis don't do that. Brands in crisis overreact. They forget who they are, and they try to be something different. They have a midlife crisis, and they start buying a brand new Ferrari, no pun intended. And they don't really hold on to who they are. And that lack of connection between who you are and who you were is super important, because the only people you're fooling when you don't do that is yourself. The audience knows that you used to be the old thing. Everyone knows you used to be the old thing. You pretending you're not the old thing and there's this brand new thing that's disassociative is just awkward and weird.
Yeah, that makes sense. So what would you do differently if you were running marketing at Jaguar right now?
Yeah, so I would have told that story. I would have gone with copy nothing, but I would have connected it.
But now the cat's out of the bag. The horse is left.
Oh, now the cat's out of the bag. Yeah, okay.
How do you fix this?
Now if I'm trying to do damage control, you have to really so I found that when brands are in a toxic relationship with whatever audience that they're targeting, the only way to move forward is to acknowledge it. Actually, a good example is Coke. So I don't know if you saw this. Coke recently, they did during the holidays an all AI ad trying to recreate the magic of one of their older ads. And if Coke's holiday ads when I was a kid were like, I don't celebrate Christmas even, but like they were very nostalgic. And they created an all AI ad to replicate it, and it was awkward and weird.
Uncanny Valley?
Yeah. Basically, you had you have a polar bear that's AI, fine. But they had actual people doing actual things. Just get an actual person to do the actual thing. Why is this weird AI person drinking a Coke when it could be a real person drinking a Coke? Then you could have done the same. You could have done the same exact thing, but just normal, where it looked normal. And they got a lot of pushback. Coke recently, I saw this last week, did a whole 6-minute short movie ad. Corner store owner who opens a business in the 80s and is selling Coke products, obviously, and just going through the years up until now. And at one point in the early 90s, two kids come in, they're arguing back and forth in front of the counter with their cans of Coke. Computers are going to take over the world, and, we're not going to need humans anymore. And the store owner is like, nah, we're going to be okay. And the time moves on, and the store owner looks like he passes away, and the daughter takes over the store with her husband. And it's 2025, and two kids walk in buying cans of Coke and say, AI is going to take over the world. And the store owner, who's now the daughter, looks at her husband and goes, I think we're going to be okay. That was Coke, in a very clever way, telling the world we made a mistake. We should have never done that AI ad. That was against who we are as a brand. That really goes against our roots of really being community-based, people-based, and we goofed. And to show you that we goofed, here's this whole amazing ad or video that we did. So brands who want to change that toxic relationship need to now somehow make amends, which brands never want to do. They never want to actually admit, like, we made a mistake. We goofed. We see that. And we see you as the audience who we should have respected more.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes the company actually doubles down on their misstep. It's like Bud Light, I think, was a good example of that. They really screwed up, and then they really dug their heels in for a while.
For a long time. I'm not saying this in theory. Like Wix did that. Wix doubled down on their SEO gaffe, and they did a whole ranking competition to see who could rank a Wix website faster. And Google came out and said, we don't rank websites for competitions. We rank websites to help people find, valuable content. So sometimes when you double down on your marketing tactics, it does have the actual opposite effect. And what worked with Wix, by the way, was actually admitting, like, look, SEO community, we didn't respect you the right way, both in terms of our product and in terms of the messaging around our product. We're here, we're different, we're new, we just want to listen. That was the tactic I took. And brands need to somehow do that. You don't have to be so explicit about it. Like Coke wasn't very explicit, but the message was still powerful. And Jaguar needs to, if I was Jaguar, I would go do an ad that shows the whole history of the innovation of copy nothing, from old yesteryear to the future, and connect those two things up, and to show, hey, we're sorry, we divorced ourselves from the product we've been selling for the last God knows how many years. That was a mistake, and we see you.
Yeah. That'd be really cool. I don't know how this relates, but there are these short trailer type mini movies on YouTube of Matrix done, the Matrix, right? The movie, The Matrix and the series, redone as if it was made in the 1950s. Have you seen any of these?
I haven't seen that. I've seen they do movie trailers as if they're made in the 1950s, which is super cool.
Yeah. So these are like 2 minute long. They're not the whole movie, but it's a 2 minute long trailer, and it's done as if it's the 50s with AI, and it's the whole Matrix theme with all the same characters from the movies, and it is really well done. And it makes me think that maybe some sort of retro thing of mixing future with nostalgia for, Jaguar would be a really novel and cool and remarkable way to go for them.
Yeah, I think that was the obvious way to go. But to the earlier point, when you're in crisis mode, you don't make those kind of rational decisions. Like that's exactly what they should be doing right now. I don't know. I feel like they haven't recovered yet, and they haven't figured out a way forward. But that's what's so interesting about this, is because the way forward, if you're one of these brands who was in crisis mode, is to take a step back. And it's the same thing as like a therapist. They're not emotionally invested the same way that you are, so they have greater clarity, but they can feel you at the same time. And that's the beauty of what a therapist is able to do. I can empathize with you. You can land with me, but I don't have the same emotional hangups as you do, so I can offer you a more guided approach. If you're in crisis mode, the way out is to take a step back and be able to see yourself for who you actually are for a minute, the best that you possibly can. And to say, okay, we're having this problem. What does that mean for us? How do we feel? Like, how do we actually feel about this? So let it all actually register for you, and to take a much more detached relationship to the problem, which may or may not be possible. And to realize, by the way, as a person, like when you go seek therapy, it's not possible for me. I can't detach. I need somebody else who can. And that could be an internal team, by the way. It doesn't have to be an outside person. A lot of my role when I was at Wix or at Semrush was internal consulting. So you have people generally who are not as invested in your particular problem within the company. So find those people.
So one example that you gave of doing damage control well was Coke with that AI is going to take over the world, longer form video commercial. And I'm curious if you believe that AI is going to take over the world, or if you think that it's just, kind of way overblown.
Yeah, it's way overblown. And I know people listening to this might push back against that, but I'll say two things. One is, if you see a brand like Coke pushing back, that should be a very strong signal about where things are actually at. The second thing is to realize, and I just recorded a video about this, enterprise teams have been pushing back for a long time, but you don't see it as much. When you're on social media or you see people talking, or you're sitting around the Shabbat table and people are talking about AI, you don't hear this. But enterprise teams have been skeptical about AI for a long time because the stakes are so high. You have big budgets, you have a big audience, you have shareholders to answer to, you have revenue. It's a big deal. And if you get things wrong, it's a big deal. So enterprise teams in general is where I think smaller companies have the advantage. They're more nimble, they can pivot more quickly. Enterprise teams have been pushing back against AI behind the scenes for a long time, basically saying, super cool. Wow, I am impressed. But is it actually going to be good enough for me to rely on for my actual audience and to earn money with, or not to lose money with? And they've been pushing back for a long time. So there has been pushback. I think you're going to see more pushback come out and be more vocal, like the Coke case, but it's been there the whole time. You just haven't heard it.
Yeah. I mean, there are people like Vishen Lakhiani, the founder of Mind Valley, who's out there publicly saying that this is the last, quote unquote, normal year. And everything's going to be vastly different from 2026 going forward. And also that he's put on a hiring freeze at his company. And he announced this at a huge event where there were a lot of employees of Mind Valley there, not just members and supporters and so forth. So he's announcing, saying, we're putting on a hiring freeze because we don't know how many jobs will be taken away by AI next year. But it's going to be a lot. It's going to be a very different world, and we can't afford to keep hiring as if nothing's changed, because everything's changing.
That I agree with. I don't think to say that AI is not going to make a seismic shift in the world, but I think that the level of shift that we're talking about, I think, is a little bit hyperbolic or overstated, or it's sensationalized. That's a good word. It's become sensationalized a bit.
Is there a particular aspect of AI that you really appreciate and incorporate or endorse?
Yeah, I think AI is great for helping you. I use it to help create video content. It's great creating images. Visual content is great if you use it. It's like anything with AI. I feel like if you ask it to write a blog post, it'll come out weird. It'll come out like that Coke ad. If you let's just create a video with AI. But if you're able to augment or improve, enhance the quality of the video or the editing process using AI, great. It's much more efficient. AI is great at creating. It's way better. I feel it's way better than a stock image. So why not? I think it excels at that sort of thing. It frees you up. Not good for designers, I guess.
Right. What if most graphic designers end up losing their jobs in the next year or two because of OpenAI and Midjourney and all these other tools that can essentially replace a graphic designer, come up with logos, come up with mood boards and website designs and everything. Are you sad about that the graphic design industry is going to be decimated by AI in the next maybe even 2 years?
Yeah, super sad. It really it hurts, right?
Yeah.
There's no. I'm not saying what you're saying isn't true. I think it is true, but it doesn't take away from the pain of that. And I think that's been a hard industry for a long time. Like, look, like, I had a graphic designer create a pack of assets for me, and I could just use Canva to do it. I don't need that person to do each asset anymore. So it's already been a hard industry, I feel like.
And you know that Darwin, his survival of the fittest is often misquoted or misinterpreted. It's not the fittest as in the most healthy or strongest. It's the most adaptable.
I like that. Wow, I didn't know that. That's very good.
I think that's it's up to humanity this decade to become much more adaptable than we would like to be, so that we can not just survive but thrive, still have jobs, and add value to to society and to the world, not be on universal basic income.
Yeah, I think it's innate to the human condition. Like, we are good at, as painful or sometimes slow as it might be, there's always a way for us to find a way to add value. So I'm confident in the human species.
All right, so let's get back to this idea of the existential crisis. Remember, the definition was the impression that life lacks meaning and confusion about one's personal identity. So we'll just take a little detour for a minute here. I'm really curious. Did you have an existential crisis personally?
I feel as a person, I'm constantly in a state of existential crisis.
That sounds stressful.
Well, it is and it's not. I think it depends on how you define this. I think that if you're talking about a sudden shock to the system, and now I'm in a crisis, that is very stressful and very difficult. I think there's an alternative version of this where you're very self-aware of who you are and how you're changing and how the world around you is changing and how you might want to change, and your internal conflicts and the different parts of who you are, because there's many parts to who we are, and that's true for brands also, and trying to make sense of it and balance all of it, I think, is a constant process. And there are moments in time where those things come more into focus. Carl Jung has famously talked about from your 20s to your 40s, you're more about fitting in and being socially adaptable. And then when you hit middle age, which is where mid-age crisis comes from, it doesn't have to be a crisis, is you realize, wait a second, I have more autonomy, stronger identity, stronger capabilities, stronger efficacy, and I can be more me than I was in the past. And for some people, that's a crisis. Who was me? I don't know. But if you were more in touch with who you were this whole time, that's not a crisis. It may be a difficult point. It may be hard, but it's not the same shock. It's just a hurdle to overcome. And I think that's true for brands in the same way. So I'm constantly in a state of existential crisis, but it's not a crisis. It's just life.
Yeah, angst.
Not teenage angst, though, so it's fine.
Carl Jung is famous for multiple things, and one of them is for coining the term synchronicity. Did you know that?
No, I did not know that.
Yeah. So, fun story about that.
Did the police give him a finder's fee?
Yeah, right. I just think it's a beautiful story how he came up with this. He was in a session with a client. So he was doing psychoanalysis, a dream recall with this client, and she was recalling in her dream she had there was a meaningful piece of jewelry for whatever reason in her dream. It was a scarab necklace. And there's this incessant tapping on the window. They're 3 stories up, so it can't be a human knocking at the window. And as far as I know, there were no trees nearby that were able to hit, with the branches against the window. So it made no sense. And Dr. Jung ignored it as much as he could, but it was very incessant. So it was like somebody really wanted him to open the window. So eventually he got up in the middle of this session and went to the window. And guess what was at the window?
I don't even know where to start guessing.
A scarab beetle.
Wow.
Yeah. So he opened the window, it came in, and he got it in his hand and he presented it to the client and said, "Here's your scarab beetle." So that was the beginning of him recognizing that the unseen world is more real than the seen world, that these synchronicities are not random. And then he started documenting it, came up with a book, which he called Synchronicity. He did a lot of research on it. Yeah, because there are no coincidences. There's no randomness in this universe.
I like that. The unconscious and the unconscious mind of the unconscious world or subworld is immortal.
Yeah, consciousness survives body. Of course it does. So Carl Jung is a real innovator. Incredible mind. Incredible soul. Let's talk about a couple of Jewish concepts just to round out the episode, because we're both in Israel here, and there's so much Jewish wisdom that can be applied to branding, to marketing, to business. And I'm curious if something pops in your mind that you want to share with our listener that really helps to take one's business to the next level just based on Jewish wisdom.
Ooh, yes. Okay. So you're hitting a sweet spot for me. A lot of my personal outlook on life comes from two Jewish philosophers. One is Rabbi Dr. Soloveitchik, and the other one is Abraham Heschel, who you might know of from marching with Dr. King hand in hand. If you ever look at those pictures from, Alabama from the 1960s, and there's a guy who looks like Colonel Sanders, that's actually Rabbi Abraham J. Heschel. And both of them have really interesting outlooks on life. One of them, and both are very existential, and to unify them both, no pun intended, there's a layer of meaning. If you're talking about like the hidden world or the unconscious world, there's a world of meaning that exists under the surface, and that's the part of life that's not coincidental. And we are creatures of meaning. And in Jewish spirituality, the only thing that is meaningful is that which actually exists, right? Which you're trying to attach to, which is God. You're trying to share in that which actually has real existence. But leaving that aside for a minute, human beings are creatures of meaning. We're constantly striving, I feel, to connect to something, to do something, to be meaningful. Because that being meaningful and existing are the same. They're the same thing.
Yeah, you must be a fan of the book "Man's Search for Meaning" by Viktor Frankl.
Yes, my wife quotes Frankl all the time. Actually, big fans. There's another interesting book, by the way. It's Bedelheim. He was a Holocaust survivor. He wrote about autonomy in the. Now I just went blank. Autonomy in the unautonomous situation, like the completely unautonomous situation. That being the Holocaust. I can't remember the name of the book. I'll try to look it up as I'm talking. But this search for meaning is so powerful, and it speaks to what marketing really, I think, should be. So many times brands focus on fleeting emotions. There's two sets of emotions that people have. One is very transient. Bruno Bedelheim, I'll look up the book in a second, and those feelings are, very surface-like. They're very transient, and they don't really register. And then there's these more deeper, meaningful feelings that we have, and those are the ones that really speak to us. And brands often focus on the more surface. If you're watching a Super Bowl commercial, chances are they're focusing more on those surface-like human emotions, which is just a mistake. They're forgettable. They might be fun for a minute. Fun, by the way, is a very transient emotion. I don't need to have fun. I can not have fun today, not have fun tomorrow, and still be okay. Connection is something I can't live without. Either connecting to myself, connecting to my work, connecting to other people, whatever it is, some form of connection. It is impossible to function without some form of connection. So if your brand is deciding between, do we focus on fun or connection, I would focus on connection. And that's really the, things like struggle. We're going to Rabbi Soloveitchik. His whole existential way of looking at life was overcoming struggle and redeeming it, turning to something meaningful. Struggle is okay. Struggle is something it's a beautiful process. That's meaningful. It's rebirth. It's a lot of things. And if brands can lead into those sort of concepts, I think they could be very meaningful. Nike is somebody who comes to mind who are back in the day. I don't know if they, maybe they're getting back to the roots now. Really focus on struggle and overcoming struggle. That's a very powerful concept. That's core to human existence. And I think if brands were a little bit more in touch with that strain of Jewish existential philosophy, they would do a little bit better marketing at the same time and have some good books to read.
Yeah. So that book by Bruno Bettelheim was, I think, The Informed Heart, Autonomy in a Mass Age.
Yes, there's that one, and there might be even be another one. I'll look it up. Autonomy in the Extreme Situation. That's the one I'm thinking of.
Autonomy in the Extreme Situation. Okay. We'll include all this stuff in the show notes for the episode. Yeah. Good stuff. So give me another concept from Judaism that you want to share for our listener to apply and do better marketing.
Yeah. Okay. One more real quick is, the Jewish idea of prophecy, I think, is a little bit misunderstood. I think people take it as this, you're putting yourself in this trance and you cleave on to God. You have this metaphysical, overwhelming situation. To quote Heschel, paraphrase Heschel rather, prophecy is God getting through to man successfully, and man being open to receiving that message. And I think for marketers, being able to be in touch with where you're at in terms of the brand spectrum, where you are as a brand right now, where are you trying to go, what do you need to get there, and hearing those messages from not just your audience, but also internally from yourself, where is the right path to go, and being in touch with how to evolve and where you should be moving towards is very much a message that you should be tapping into, not one that you should actively try to find. You can hear it if you quiet down enough.
Good stuff. Well, I know we're out of time here. So if our listener wants to work with you, wants to learn more from you, where should we send them?
You can go to unifybrandmarketing.com or look me up on LinkedIn.
All right. Awesome. Mordy, thank you. It was a great catch up and great shares and really powerful insights and existential thinking here that I think our listener needs to be exposed to more of, and just generally everybody in society does.
Thanks for giving me the platform to share it, because it's so needed.
Yeah. All right. And thank you, listener. Make it a great week. Reveal some light in the world, and we'll catch you in the next episode. I'm your host, Stephan Spencer, signing off.